There's been a lot of talk and discussion online when it comes to prices with a variety of different things, but when it comes to the Nintendo Switch 2, talking about Mario Kart World. But I think that Nintendo Switch 2 actually dodged a massive, huge problem and bullet recently, and we're going to talk about that because I actually didn't notice it too much when I read off the official prices from Nintendo's press release, but I wanted to go over what I think that they did in order to, I would say, dodge the big PR hit that they take. Now, there's already been a number of issues that have been sometimes a little bit self-inflicted, and other times, for the most part, though, outside sources just saying random stuff and spreading things that just simply aren't true overall with the game prices or with the things with the system. So it's a little bit of both overall, but mainly outside stuff. But that's beside the point at this point, because I think most people that want a Nintendo Switch 2 are kind of coming to the grips of, okay, this is how much it's going to cost, this is what I have to budget, here's what's going on here. But the big problem I think that they actually dodged was recently when they put up the MSRPs for the different prices of the Nintendo Switch 2. You have the Nintendo Switch 2 standard, that's $449.99, and the Nintendo Switch 2 plus Mario Kart World bundle at $499.99. And why I think that was a dodge of a bullet is because there was no price increase because of the tariffs that are even levied that they are going to take a hit on overall. They're probably not going to be making much off of this system when it comes to the actual sale of it. However, if you look at the games, all of the prices have stayed the same so far. DK Bonanza is still 70, Mario Kart World still 80, but I didn't go over this and I want to talk about it. The Nintendo Switch 2 Pro controller is now $84.99, and the Nintendo Switch 2 pair of Joy-Cons are now $94.99. Those are $5 up from previously where Nintendo stated them back on April 2nd. So that's definitely unfortunate. Now, some of the other stuff also went up a bit in ranges from like the dock set or from like the strap and other stuff. I'm not exactly sure where the changes are there, but most people are going to be focused on the first number of things here. How much is the standard? How much is the Mario Kart World bundle? How much is Mario Kart World by itself physical? How much is Donkey Kong Bonanza when it comes to the first party stuff? And the controllers and Joy-Cons. You want an extra pair of Joy-Cons? You want a Nintendo Switch Pro controller? How much are those? So $5 more on those. And one thing that I saw online, some people were already trying to farm some outrage when it comes down to it, and I completely understand. Just remember, when it comes to the Nintendo Switch 2, and this is where I think they dodged the bullet and actually planned well ahead, even if you don't have a Nintendo Switch 2 Pro controller, you can use Nintendo Switch 1 official controllers on the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, there might be some Joy-Cons, obviously, that might not connect because you can't attach them on anything, but anything that connects normally Bluetooth with what you can use on the Nintendo Switch 1, so 8-bit controllers and stuff like that, they should work. Just for the case of precision right now, just so we can make sure that we don't have any misinformation, we know for a fact that official Nintendo Switch Joy-Cons and official Nintendo Switch 1 Pro controllers, those work with Nintendo Switch 2 and all of the games. So Nintendo avoided a price hike on the system itself. And when it comes to the accessories, those are accessories. The system already comes with a Joy-Con 2, so you don't necessarily have to buy the Pro controller or anything. And even if you can't afford it or if you don't feel like getting it, you can use your Nintendo Switch 1 Pro controllers for Nintendo Switch 2 games. So that was, one, an ingenious design. That's going to help save people money overall. But two, just in case something happens, you're able to instantly have multiplayer action if you already have a bunch of Joy-Cons or if you already have Pro controllers, which people did build up pretty sizable collections over the course of the life of the Nintendo Switch 1. So I think that was a very good thing that Nintendo did to make sure people can have instant multiplayer, instant backup controllers, and if some of these prices are a bit much, well, then you can still use your Nintendo Switch 1 Joy-Cons and your Nintendo Switch 1 Pro controllers for all things on the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, some have asked about that little C button. When it comes down to it, do you need to have that C button to use it? And you don't. If you go to the home menu, even with the Switch 1 Pro controller on Switch 2, go to the home menu, there is a chat little icon and you can click on it from there and still access it. However, the Nintendo Switch 2 Pro controller has an audio jack and the headphone jack, so you can get the audio into a headphone and play it that type of way. whereas the Nintendo Switch 1 Pro controller doesn't have that. So you're going to have to use Bluetooth headphones, or you're going to have to use the built-in audio on the game chat that they showed, the little mic that cancels out the noise and all that. I actually want to try that out to see if that actually works as well as Nintendo says that it works, because it seems almost too good to be true that you can have somebody vacuuming or freaking using a blender or something like that, and all of a sudden they can't hear anything. People on the mic can't hear anything, and you can hear the audio clearly and stuff. So I definitely want to test that one out. But to me, they definitely dodged the bullet here with these pricings here and these tariffs, because honestly, the system price could go up. So for right now, if you want to get one, you definitely want to go out there and get one for this price, because we don't know what's going to happen with this administration and the tariff situation that is going down. It could jump up if they don't get it on an exempt list, or if they just decide to say, we want to tariff more when it comes to Cambodia, or when it comes to Vietnam, or when it comes to China, but mainly Nintendo's in Vietnam with the systems. But you just never know what's going to happen. And we did get some price jumps here because of the tariffs. But one thing that's not going to jump up is the cost of subscribing to the channel, which is always going to be free. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you're not subscribed at this point, and hit that like button and click that notification bell to get my vids as soon as they drop. Now let's go ahead and jump into some other things here that's happening with the Nintendo Switch 2. I'm starting to see a lot of people kind of downplay and kind of put up weird comparisons and stuff with the Nintendo Switch 2. I've heard some people feel that it's not worth the price overall, and I always find that to be like, okay, I get it. Like, if you don't think Mario Kart or some of the games are worth it because they're older ports, or because the game just isn't worth more in terms of from a graphical perspective or whatever you want to feel, like, that's fine. But in terms of the system itself, I think the system itself is okay priced. If you look at the Steam Deck, that's $400 for an 800p LCD Steam Deck. It doesn't have movable part Joy-Cons like the Nintendo Switch 2, because each one of those Joy-Cons double as a controller. So you get two controllers in the package, a stronger system, a 1080p screen that supports VRR at 120 frames per second, for only $50 more than a Steam Deck. Now, Steam Deck has some other things that obviously it can do over it, but from a power perspective and from what the system is in terms of how much it would cost to manufacture and put up, I don't really think this system is underpowered, or I don't really think this system is overpriced or anything. So I have seen that quite a bit, and that one doesn't really make sense. I did see some reporters like Tom Warren saying that people are saying drop the price for the price of the system, but I think it's really for the price of Mario Kart World that they're saying that. I think the system, for the tech and what you get and the power overall, it's actually solid. But I do know that in different regions it is more expensive, or maybe the currency exchange makes it a bit more. But for what you're getting compared to what's on the market when it comes to a hybrid device, I actually think it's pretty good. And people are just really upset about Mario Kart World, which has already been talked about ad nauseum at this point on my live streams and in videos. So we already know about that. You can either get the game or you don't get the game, but I understand for those that are upset about that. Now, I do want to talk about the GameStop trade-in value as well, because GameStop is doing some trade-in value for the Nintendo Switch 2, and I get it, guys. Stuff is higher price, but the trade-in value here, I want to know what you guys think about the trade-in value, because I think it's okay, but you can probably get a bit more when it comes to selling it on the open market like Facebook Marketplace, or like OfferUp, or maybe even eBay. So essentially, here's what the trade-in offers are. For a Nintendo Switch Lite, you can get $100. Switch Lites usually are $200 brand new, so $100 off of that. So I guess maybe $125 to $150 would have been nice. But for the Nintendo Switch version 1 or the version 2, you can get $125. So that's like, okay, the default price on those are $299. So that's definitely considerably less, right? And then for the Nintendo Switch OLED, you can get $175. Now, this is where I'm saying, you know what, if you have a Nintendo Switch OLED, I get maybe having the urge to trade it in or to sell it. And you can still do that if you need to sell it, even if you don't want it anymore. I don't really care what you guys do when it comes to your tech. You guys can buy and sell whatever you want. I'm just here to give you guys the information. I will say this, the Nintendo Switch OLED could end up becoming something kind of interesting, and I wouldn't say rare, but just interesting to have because of that OLED screen. The Nintendo Switch 2 has a nice liquid crystal display screen. It's a good screen, but it's not quite the OLED color type of screen. Now, it does have HDR, and HDR is awesome, and it's going to make stuff look close, but it's not quite the OLED screen when it comes down to it. So if you want to hold on to one of those, and maybe if you have an older Nintendo Switch, like a V2 Switch, trade in that, or a Switch Lite to get yourself $100 off of the Switch 2, that might be a good option. But yeah, if you have an OLED, you can still trade it in. You might be able to get more money for it, like I said, on the open market, so on eBay or something like that. So just keep all of your options in mind. A lot of you guys have been hitting me up about, should I trade in my Switch or what's going on here? So it's going to be a scenario to scenario. Each person's going to be different in terms of financial situations. But I would say if you have an OLED, hold on to it or sell it on the open market. If you have a Switch Lite, that seems okay, passable enough to trade that in, you know, and get the $100. And if you have a Switch V1, V2, depending on what Switch V1 you have, you might want to look up and research. If that's a launch model one, you might want to keep that one. But if it's a V2 and you want to trade it in for $125, I want to see if you can get more on the open market. So that's my analysis on the GameStop trade-in stuff that's going down. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is the Guardians of Azuma Nintendo Switch 2 game. This is probably the craziest game so far that we've seen. Now, we know about the 64 gigabyte carts, and there's something happening here. There's rumors about there only being two sizes, either 64 gigabytes or 8 gigabytes for the Nintendo Switch 2, at least initially here. But now we have another 64 gigabyte cartridge confirmed, and that is Rune Factory Guardians of Azuma. But this cartridge is unique because this cartridge essentially is like the smart delivery, but with both games on there and can be dual booted as well, which is very interesting. This is the only game that I know so far that does this. So here's what Marvelous had to say about this. What is the physical Nintendo Switch 2 edition? So the Nintendo Switch 2 edition is a red 64 gigabyte game card that includes in full the Nintendo Switch game and the upgrade pack. There's no need to download the full game. Simply insert the card into either a Nintendo Switch 1 or a Nintendo Switch 2 console, and the correct version will launch automatically. Like most modern titles, there may be a small updates or patches available at launch to provide minor fixes and improvements, but rest assured, the complete game is on the game card, ready to play from day one. So this is very interesting because I didn't know you could make a dual boot Nintendo Switch 2 game card. If you play it on the Switch 1, it'll boot up that version. If you play it on the Switch 2, it'll boot up that version. So very much like a smart delivery type of thing. And I thought that if you're making a Nintendo Switch 2 edition of the game, it's the Nintendo Switch 2 edition and you can't play it on the Nintendo Switch 1. And that's probably the case for most of the games so far. But for right now, for what we know, with this game in particular, there's both of them on the cart. So that's incredible. The game is $70 plus, so it is a pricey game, but it might be worth it for collectors out there because it is on a red 64 gigabyte cart. I don't know how many of these they're going to produce. Who knows? The game looks really good, and obviously if you play it on Switch 2, you're going to get that up resolution, you're going to get that up frame rate, because the game on Switch 1 is probably going to be 30 frames, maybe some dips here and there. It's not going to look as good with the actual picture quality and everything. I'm playing this type of Rune Factory game anywhere that you want with the 1080p HDR screen, with really nice screen, and HD Rumble 2. I think that's going to be really nice with the Nintendo Switch 2. So if you're into Rune Factory and you want to get into this game, which looks really cool from the combat and different stuff that you can do, a lot of features. They've been working on this game for quite some time. I think that the Nintendo Switch 2 version might be a good option, and that's going to be a launch title for the Nintendo Switch 2. And the last thing that I want to talk about is some of the discussion around the Pro Controller and the stuff with that, because I've seen some people complaining about the prices, and I understand that, man. Look, I don't ever like to see prices go up. The Nintendo Switch 2 Pro Controller is now $85. It was supposed to be $80, now it's $85. Obviously with tax, you're looking at maybe about $90 or so, depending on where you live, or maybe a little bit less. But yeah, I want to talk about this because the Nintendo Switch 2 Pro Controller, out of all the things that you can question when it comes to pricing and all that, I think that this one might not be the one to question. One, because of the tariff situation that happened, you know, but I get it. Nobody likes prices going up. But two, because Nintendo actually built in like an elite controller into the standard Nintendo Switch 2 Pro Controller. And what I mean by that is that the controller actually comes with a host of great features from the Nintendo Switch 1 Pro Controller. So you still have the NFC amiibo support, you still have all the buttons that you're used to, but with this Nintendo Switch 2 Pro Controller, you have back programmable buttons like bumpers on the handles, which is something new for Nintendo. That's stuff that you usually see like in the elite controllers or like the DualSense Edge, right? The high price $100 plus controllers on other systems, or third-party controllers that are pricier overall. But these ones also have HD Rumble 2 built in. They have motion controls as well, amiibo functionality, like I said, capture button, C button for game chat, and they're calling it the GL and GR buttons for the programmable mappable ones. And thankfully, finally, the Nintendo Switch 2 Pro Controller has an audio jack for game chat and audio from the game. So if you want to plug in your headset and chat and do all the stuff that you've been able to do for quite a while on other systems, it is available now at this point. So I do think that, well, yes, price going up, definitely not great. Overall, this Nintendo Switch 2 Pro Controller is really quality. And from the hands-on, from people that went to the different events with the Nintendo Switch 2 experience, it's a super nice quality controller. Nintendo also has brand new redesigned joysticks in there. There's a lot of concern about the drifting situation, but they're calling them smooth gliding sticks that have been redesigned. So they're not using the same thing that they use for the Nintendo Switch 1. So I'm guessing they have their own technology built into those sticks for anti-drift, if they're calling them smooth gliding sticks. They're redesigned. So I don't think that's going to be a problem with them. But once again, we're going to have to wait and see, but I think everything's going to be okay when it comes to the Nintendo Switch 2 Pro Controller. Because I did see some people talking about it on Twitter. I actually quote tweeted someone, talking about like, hey, look, if you compare it to the Microsoft and Sony like high-end controllers, it's actually pretty affordable overall. And like I stated, you can use all of your Nintendo Switch 1 official Joy-Cons and Pro Controllers with the Nintendo Switch 2 and Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive games. So that's definitely a good thing. But what are your thoughts on everything that we talked about here when it comes to the Nintendo Switch 2 and dodging a bullet, Guardians of Azuma, the controller, price jumps, tariffs, all that stuff? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch 2 RPG content and more right here on screen. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.